Donald Trump has been a paragon of consistency. He's still dividing, he's still blaming, he's still belittling other people.
Don't even get me started on his new running mate. At least Mike Pence was polite.
Decency and respect are on the ballot in 2024.
It's the fourth quarter. We're down a field goal, but we're on offense and we've got the ball. We're driving down the field. And boy, do we have the right team.
It's the fourth and final day of the Democratic National Convention, with Kamala Harris preparing for her big moment later tonight. She will officially accept her party's presidential nomination, delivering the biggest speech yet of her political career. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, her running mate, introduced himself to the nation last night. The party rolling out a lineup of stars and high-profile names to make the case for the Democratic ticket. Here to talk about all of this, The Hill's White House reporter Alex Gangitano, joining us now from Chicago. Alex, Harris will close out the convention later tonight, delivering her headlining speech. But let's look back on last night at the DNC. What did we hear from her vice president? What was his main message?
Yeah, I think what we heard from Governor Tim Walz is exactly what Democrats wanted him to do. They wanted him to introduce himself to America, but make him, this genuine, joyful, approachable figure to try to make him get that, Midwestern charm out there. And I think that's exactly what he did. They really played up the fact that he's a former coach, a former teacher, and then turned congressman. They brought his family in. These were all really humanizing elements. And they tried to balance out, her California lawyer background with him, making him, the regular guy who's looking out for his Minnesota constituents and wants to look out for all American voters in this really joyful way. And I think he was able to accomplish just that. Being in the room, being on the floor during that speech, the crowd loved it. Of course, the Minnesota delegation loved it, and there was so much energy behind him.
Right, some really personal moments there with his family especially. Now, the night featured a list of rising Democratic stars like Maryland Governor Wes Moore, and plenty of celebrities were there. We had that surprise appearance from Oprah Winfrey. Alex, who really stood out?
Yeah, well, Wes Moore, governor of Maryland, is someone who Democrats have had their eyes on for years as a potential future presidential contender. And I think his speech really showed his ability to speak in this kind of setting and to really engage everybody. But Oprah, I think, stood out in such a strong way. She's someone who, of course, is famous to all Americans, but she spoke about this unity piece, about being an independent but supporting the Harris ticket because, she's a patriot and wants to see the country move forward. Of course, she's a native Chicago woman, and that came out. She had a lot of pride and passion for being here. But I really think that she was the one who brought the house down, so to speak, last night. And then we also heard from Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, who, of course, is considered a great messenger for Democrats and was a really strong kind of messenger on this freedom theme that we've been hearing. And I thought Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg stood out. I mean, he always does. He is one of the Democrats' top messengers. He can, go on Fox News and spread the message that Democrats want out there. And he even talked about that in his speech, about his time as a veteran, as his time as a father, all these elements that have created the Buttigieg that we know now. And I thought his speech was really impactful.
Alex, all right, at the end of the day, all of these speeches, the excitement, it's all building up to later tonight when Kamala Harris will speak. Now, polling numbers remain in her favor, with an Economist YouGov poll out just this week showing she has a 13-point lead among women voters. This is a pretty sizable gain here. How can she maintain this type of enthusiasm through November?
Yeah, she's made gains with women voters, young voters, undecided. These are all momentum that's behind her that she needs to keep up until after Labor Day, after September, into October. And I think the speech tonight will really set the precedent of if she can keep up that momentum. The vice president is expected to talk about three main things, according to her campaign. One is her background as growing up in a middle-class family with a working mother and how that shaped her political political life now. The next is the conservative Project 2025 agenda and, what the conservative vision for America is, warning against that. We've seen that a lot of other speakers do that as well. And lastly, the vice president wants to drive home that her patriotism is what has made her want to be president, and that she, promises to be the president for all Americans. That's a theme that President Biden ran really heavily on in 2020, worked for him. So she's going to lean into that as well. But this is, of course, the most important moment of her political career, as you mentioned, and she has, a pretty high bar in order to be memorable, considering the Obamas were so memorable, Oprah was so memorable, and now it all comes down to tonight.
Will certainly be a big moment and a historic moment for sure. Now, the Harris team is working hard at courting independent voters as well as picking up Republicans straying from their party, though it's not exactly comfortable with Donald Trump. A handful of Republicans even spoke at the DNC. Alex, how unusual is that, and what did they have to say?
Yeah, so we heard from two former Trump administration officials, Stephanie Grisham and Olivia Troy, and both of them talked about that they know Donald Trump, they've worked for him, and that's why they wanted to be here this week and speak out against him. And I think that is impactful. If you're someone who's an undecided voter watching on TV, you're probably not inside of this convention hall. These are, the hardcore Democrats who are excited and ready to vote for Harris. But if you're someone watching at home on TV, and you see an insider perspective of what the Trump White House looked like and warns against it, that could be something that resonates with you. And then tonight we're going to hear from former Congressman Adam Kinzinger of Illinois. He's someone who has been making the rounds on television and has really become a household name as a Republican who turned against Trump. His endorsement for President Biden months ago was pretty big for him to come out and say, I not only oppose Trump, but I endorse Biden, and now he's endorsed Harris as well. So I think his speech will definitely be one to watch tonight and one that could sway undecided voters.
Yeah, we can certainly expect Democrats to promote those Republican voices between now and November. Michelle and Barack Obama heavily criticized Trump during their own convention speeches. Now he's firing back. Alex, what is his response?
Yeah, so, the Trump team has warned against him, getting too personal, and the lawmakers have said not to get too personal, but he couldn't help himself but fire back against the Obamas and call out certain, parts of their speech. But, Barack Obama, former President Obama, had a lot to say about Trump, about, his successor and how dangerous he thinks he is. And so, the former president coming out and trying to push back on those claims was expected. But of course, he's going to go personal. We actually heard around the time of Obama's speech, Trump saying that he actually really likes Obama, which is a bit of a change from how we've heard Trump talk about Obama. So I think this will be a back and forth between the two until November, especially if Obama wants to engage with it.
Quite a change for sure. Now, one person making it known he doesn't like the tone of Democrats' attacks on Trump is J.D. Vance. What is he worried about here?
Yeah, J.D. Vance, I think, wants to be taken seriously on this ticket as a policy-oriented person, somebody who has governed before. He's in the Senate. He wants to move the Republican Party forward, but he is part of this MAGA base. And so he's, of course, Trump's running mate. Any attack that Trump has, he's going to be aligned with it. We've also seen J.D. Vance, though, take on his own personal attacks. He's especially picked on Governor Tim Walz. Makes sense. The two of them are running up against one another for vice president, but he's talked about Vance's military background, suggesting that Walz has been insincere about his military background. Vance has also talked about how Walz alluded to using IVF as a fertility treatment, but they really used a different fertility treatment, and the Walz family, calling them liars, actually. So Vance is definitely leaning in to these personal attacks too, but they seem to be a little more pointed at Walz as they prepare to debate one another this fall.
Independent candidate RFK Jr. is set to speak tomorrow. Some are saying he may suspend his campaign and endorse Donald Trump by the end of the week. How could this really shake up the race for the White House?
Yeah, since Harris took over the top of the ticket and President Biden dropped out, polling has indicated that RFK Jr. is actually hurting Trump's campaign now. Before, it was kind of up in the air over if he was hurting Trump or Biden's candidacy, and now with Harris, it turns out that it's Trump. So with polling looking like that, I think RFK is trying to figure out, do I endorse Trump and try to help boost him forward? If right now I'm actually boosting Harris to an extent. So I do think it could shake up the race. I think the Harris campaign probably wants him to drop out sooner rather than later so that, things can kind of settle and they can look at polling without RFK, but with enough time to really figure out what they're looking at and where they need to focus on. And this could be the week that things start to shake up.
Well, a Kennedy endorsing Donald Trump, really not on many bingo cards. Before we go, Alex, I cannot leave without wishing you a very, very happy birthday. I know it's been busy all week long. Hope you at least get a nap in, maybe a celebration. Your colleagues here in Washington wish you the best.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right, we'll leave it there at The Hill's Alex Gangitano. That's today's Daily Debrief. I'm Margaret Chadbourn. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel. And come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.